I published a new blog post earlier today, February 23rd, discussing some of my trades over the past few days. A link to my blog post can be found in my profile section here at YouTube. I continued to reduce my stock allocation some and to increase my allocation to alternative yield assets. The main shift is to increase my weekly purchases of Treasury bills at auction to approximately $40,000 each week, simply as an alternative to keeping funds in lower yielding money market funds until there is a significant decline in stocks that makes the risk reward balance for me more favorable than it is now. Also restarted some minor positions in term bond ETFs where all the bonds owned by the fund mature in a single year. And I added to a REIT equity preferred stock NSA PRA. I discussed in my blog post the first GDP estimate for the fourth quarter and the December personal consumption inflation numbers. Both are consistent with a developing stagflation scenario in the U.S. economy. And this is occurring when stock valuations are near all-time highs using traditional valuation metrics like the Shiller PE and the Buffett indicator and many more that I've cited and discussed in my blogs. The decline in the stock market today, over 800 points in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, was due in part to even more concerns about AI diminishing the future profits and revenues of many software products, and to Trump creating needlessly more chaos in U.S. trade policy. Many of the software stocks have high multiples to non-GAAP forecasted earnings and extremely high multiples when using GAAP estimates that include the excessively generous stock compensation, which are very high for many of these companies. And money is being used by them to buy back stock that simply offsets the compensation that has been being given to their employees and stock. Trump repeated his claim that foreign countries and companies pay the Republican tariff taxes when he withdrew his support for a Republican candidate in Colorado's 3rd Congressional District, Jeff Hurd, who was among the few House Republicans to vote in favor of repealing some of the tariffs on Canadian exports. Trump has disrupted trade relations with Canada, possibly permanently, and Canada is now seeking alternatives to U.S. trade. Trump's claim that foreign countries and companies pay the U.S. tariff taxes is delusional and demonstrably false, but Trump will continue to make that claim, knowing that many will believe him. And he wants to make it look like the U.S. tariff taxes are free money to the United States government with no adverse impact on U.S. companies and consumers. Trump will never acknowledge, nor will anyone in his administration, that the Republican tariff taxes are paid by U.S. importers directly to the U.S. Customs Bureau. And those companies, U.S. companies, will attempt to pass along all or almost all of the higher input costs for products that they import to U.S. consumers by raising the price of their products. The Republican tariff taxes are simply massive tax increases on U.S. consumers that disproportionately fall on lower and middle income families. And many of those, of course, millions of those families are voted for Trump in the last election. Republicans will never admit to that fact. The most recent senseless trade chaos created by Trump is the imposition of a 15% tariff on all imported products with certain categories exempted for 150 days. And that is under Section 122 of the 1974 Trade Act. For them to last more than 150 days, Congress would have to extend the time period, which will not happen before the midterm elections. Many of the Republicans will not want to go on record as approving a tax increase on U.S. companies and consumers just prior to the midterm elections. I would also note that these tariffs that he's imposing under Section 122 are of questionable legality, since they're the reason that they can be imposed, which is a serious balance of payments deficit, is not something that is unusual or extraordinary or an emergency that requires this kind of action. I would note that the U.S. trade deficit in 2025 was $901.5 billion, down just 0.2% from 2024. The EU suspended its approval process of the recently negotiated trade deal, waiting for clarification as to what Trump is actually going to do with the Section 122 tariff and any other tariff that he will try to impose after the EPA ones were struck down by the Supreme Court. This temporary tariff measure serves no legitimate purpose other than to tax U.S. importers and ultimately U.S. consumers for 5 months. Trump also made it clear that he would use his power to delay refunds of the illegally collected tariffs under EPA. Trump has also threatened to impose additional tariffs using Section 301 of the 1974 Trade Act, which creates even more uncertainty about U.S. trade policy from the perspective of foreign countries. To impose tariffs under that section, there needs to be a lengthy investigation into some law or practice in a particular foreign country that allegedly discriminates against U.S. trade, and then the tariff remedy has to be significantly linked to the amount of discrimination found. A record is developed that can be reviewed by a court that would probably prevent abuses by the Trump administration of that narrow authority. The needless uncertainty that the King of Chaos is creating will have negative impacts on the U.S. economy, which is already weakening, and the U.S. job market, which is the Bureau of Labor Statistics, as I noted in a recent video, which I will link in the more section below, only created 181,000 jobs for all of 2025. And that uncertainty will also delay the retrenchment of the increase in consumer prices being caused by the tariffs, and will place a lid on companies willing to add new jobs while all of this is sorted out in the future.